Inflation was down in December, but if you've been at the grocery store lately, you may have seen that food prices have been going up. Brian Lilley is one of our regular contributors and a Toronto Sun columnist, and we're going to talk to Brian about inflation and what's going on with food prices right now. He joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, how does Stats Canada say inflation is going down when it's getting even more difficult to feed our families?
Because the way Stats Canada measures inflation, it takes into account a whole pile of different elements that we need to buy for daily life. Clothing, household goods, toiletries, soap and deodorant, things like that. By the way, those are going up as well, significantly. But oil and gas are both down. So the gas you put in your car, not the natural gas, but the gas you put in your car down 13% in December compared to November. Home heating fuel down 14%. Now, those have both gone up tremendously over the last year. So year over year, it's still very large, but month over month, they went down. So that helped overall inflation go down from 6.8% to 6.3. That is still ridiculously high for overall inflation. We generally want it between 2 and 3%, nothing above that. So it's still more than double the Bank of Canada's rate. But you're right on food. Let me give you some of the numbers here, because overall food inflation is more than 11%. But within that, there's some eye-popping numbers. Okay, so I'm just going to look at my screen and read them off. Tomatoes up 21.9%. Other fresh vegetables up 11.7%. Non-alcoholic beverages. So we're talking your Coke, your Pepsi, your Buble, that's up 16.6%. Bakery products up 13.5%. Coffee and tea 13.2%. Preserved fruit and fruit preparations like jams, that's up 7.2%. That seems like a bargain. Everybody going to the grocery store knows that this is a problem. The question is, does it become a political problem? My colleague Warren Kinsella writing in The Sun the other day that empires like the Russian Empire have been taken down by the price of bread. This could become politically toxic for Justin Trudeau and politically helpful for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
We've seen a lot of people as well tweet about the price of chicken. The 6 packs of chicken, $37 to $40. I mean, it's unbelievable what's happening right now. Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Western Canada recently. He spoke on a number of very important issues. But before we get to those, how did he end up in a fight with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe?
Yeah, well, because he went to Scott Moe's house, put his feet up on the coffee table while relaxing on the couch and eating almost snacks, and didn't tell him he was there. Uh, Justin Trudeau went to Saskatoon, toured a rare earth mineral or elements processing facility in Saskatoon with Saskatoon Mayor Charlie Clark. Now, if you know that area, Charlie Clark is he's a progressive hero to the Liberals and the NDP. I see him as someone that the Liberals might try and court as a candidate to run someday. He kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, though, on the prairies because so many of the elected officials are conservative, but Charlie Clark's there. So Trudeau meets with Clark. He holds a news conference with Clark at this processing facility. Moe finds out that Trudeau's there through the media. And Moe's point was, this is really disappointing, but it's not shocking. And he said it's disappointing because this is an area where the federal government and the province of Saskatchewan see eye to eye. And he said it would have been a great opportunity for us to sit down together. Trudeau's asked about it at his news conference and says, well, I've done lots of announcements with Premier Moe, and we'll do more. And Saskatchewan's a good partner. And then he starts taking a shot at Moe, saying, but the government of Saskatchewan needs to get, there's a lot of work to do when it comes to environmental issues and green jobs. Kind of an unfair and unprompted dig at Moe that he didn't have to take.
Now, despite the dust-up with Premier Moe, Brian Moe told reporters that he strongly believes the feds and the provinces are very close to a deal on health funding. What can you tell us at this point?
They've been at odds for quite a while. The premiers are unanimous in this, and it's been fascinating to watch this because we've seen premiers come and go, political stripes running the different provinces change. But for the last 4 or 5 years, there's been unanimity among conservative-oriented governments, liberal governments, New Democrat governments, including British Columbia. They're all saying the same thing. The federal government is not a good partner when it comes to healthcare funding. They want an immediate increase. The federal government currently provides about 22% of total funding. The Feds say, no, it's higher. It's over 30% because we transferred you tax points. Either way, the provinces are saying, you still need to be providing more. It's not the 50-50 partnership it once was. Trudeau has been reluctant to that, despite campaigning when he was first elected that Harper's plan was a multi-billion-dollar cut to healthcare. He kept it. He not only kept it, he's the one that actually implemented it 2 years after he took office. So Trudeau's been talking out of both sides of his mouth on this health issue. Lately, he's been saying you want strings attached. But I think they've found a way that the premiers will accept some of the strings because they're mostly around reporting. It's reporting data. Okay, Alberta's got a backlog of surgeries in X. You get the money. How has that helped? You've got to report back. The provinces need to do a better job of reporting. I would agree with that, and I would agree that the federal government needs to do a better job of collecting and releasing that information because we don't have a lot of good, solid information across the country where we're able to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. We need that. So if that is what gets a deal, I think it's a good idea.
Now, Brian, one of the issues Trudeau was asked about during his recent stop here in Western Canada was on bail reform. Now, this is a big issue for premiers, police chiefs, and mayors all across the country. Is Prime Minister Trudeau open to potentially reforming bail?
He hinted that perhaps he is, but I'm not too sure, and I'll tell you why. In 2019, they brought in Bill C-75. This is the one that said to judges, it codified in law that judges have to use restraint in granting bail, not restraint in keeping people in jail, but restraint for refusing bail. That granting bail has to be the default option, less onerous restrictions on people. Whether it was well intended, misguided, I don't know. It seemed to come out of the same academic area that New York State had. And I can tell you right now, New York State, the Democratic governor there, they're having the same problems because they went down the same path. And in her State of the State address last week, she announced that they're going to go back. Why? They're having the same issues. Repeat violent offenders arrested, granted bail, they reoffend, they're granted bail again, they reoffend. This is what we're dealing with in this country. So over the weekend, the premiers released a letter again. All 13 premiers, every province, every territory, every political party represented said the same thing to Trudeau. This is a problem. We want a reverse onus clause put into Section 95 of the Criminal Code so that if you have a loaded, prohibited gun on you, that you have to prove why you need bail. Not having the Crown doesn't have to prove why you should be denied bail. You have to prove why you get it. The Prime Minister did say he'd be open to considering that. It would be definitely a departure from where he and his government have been. But I hope that on serious repeat offenders, that he does do something, because so far his government's been going the other way, as we've talked about before, getting rid of mandatory minimum sentences and these bail reforms. He's been going the wrong way. Maybe all 13 premiers from all provinces and territories and all parties is enough to convince him, okay, I've gone too far.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was also asked about Bill C-21, Brian, modifications to the gun control bill. He was asked specifically about how this will impact farmers and possibly violate Indigenous treaty rights. Did he show any sign of looking to change the government's stance on this? Because, Brian, hunters are pretty angry right now.
Yeah, not at all. He seemed to double down. And I'm trying to understand the government on this because they were steadfast in C-21 and the amendments. Then they started saying, okay, well, we're listening. Maybe we went too far. Now they're pushing back again, saying, no, these guns are too dangerous to be in the hands of Canadians. There've been no problems with them. People aren't out committing gun crimes with the Welby waterfowl shotgun that's going to be banned. But, these things are on the list. Yesterday, it seemed like, a case of he had taken one step forward before, and now he's taking 2 steps back. That's what the government seems to be doing. Really, what I think they're doing is licking their finger, putting it up, and seeing which way the wind is blowing and who's angriest at the moment. That, I think, seems to be driving their policy, which if you have read even the excerpts of Bill Morneau's book or seen some of the interviews he's done, the former finance minister says, yeah, that's the way that the prime minister's office determines public policy an awful lot. It's about the news cycle. It's about popularity. It's about Twitter. It's not about sound public policy.
Okay, let's talk about natural gas for just a moment here. Made big headlines last week, Brian. A call to ban gas stoves in the United States. At the same time, Japan's prime minister is begging Canada for natural gas. Now, Brian, you believe these two issues may be related somehow? How so?
Because there is a major push on to delegitimize the use of natural gas, to shut it down. And it's the same playbook that was used to villainize the oil and gas industry in Canada, Alberta in particular, especially when it comes to the tar sands, or the oil sands as they're properly called. A lot of the same groups, the Tides Foundation, Rockefeller Brothers Fund. Now the new player in all this is the Bezos Earth Fund. That's Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has a $10 billion fund devoted to climate change issues. This is what's driving an awful lot of this. That so-called study that claimed that your kids are 12.7% more likely to get asthma if you have a gas stove in your home was funded by a group called the Rocky Mountain Institute. They're funded by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. They're funded by Bezos Earth Fund, the MacArthur Foundation, and a lot of these other groups that are fully against natural gas. They're against all fossil fuels. So they don't care that natural gas is seen as a transition fuel around the world. They just want it ended. So, they funded that study. They're also funding groups that are going around convincing municipal councils to pass calls to ban the use of natural gas for electricity generation. That's happened in about 30 municipalities here in Ontario. Vancouver, Toronto have both put forward policies to say we need to stop using natural gas to heat our homes by 2030. They stop using it for hot water tanks. Natural gas is the number one source of electric power. Sorry, I'm from Ontario. We still always call it hydroelectric. It's the number one source of electricity generation in Alberta. If you turned around and said to Alberta, you've got to get rid of natural gas, what are they going to make their electricity from? What will they generate it from? Wind is not where it should be yet. Solar is completely unreliable. And anybody you talk to in the electricity sector says you need natural gas as a backup when you are using wind and solar, because the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining. And at that point, you still have customers demanding electricity. That's when you turn on the natural gas, which is one of the most easy to switch fuels. All of this is a push against natural gas. That's what, they've got a hold on the Trudeau government. So you had Japan, you had Germany come, ask for our natural gas. The Germans built a liquefied natural gas import terminal in 10 months. We could have done something similar to help with the export of liquefied natural gas. We didn't. We refused to, because the Trudeau government just fundamentally believes we need to decarbonize our economy. And all of this is driven by activists funded by these same rich foundations that funded the bogus natural gas stove study. It's all part and parcel of the same progressive groupthink.
Brian, we saw the video of a Conservative senator blasting Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland about a request for $2 billion so the Trudeau Liberals could buy shares in a company that allegedly does not exist. What's the story here?
Yeah, I started getting this. I don't know about you, but I started getting this video sent to me last week. Somebody had found it. It was a Senate hearing from December 7th. It got very little media attention. In fact, Hal, when I looked for any media coverage of this hearing where Minister Freeland was there to talk about the fall economic statement, there was one story in the Globe and Mail on December 8th, the day after it happened, detailing exactly what this video discusses. That's it. Nobody else on the Hill covered it. There were no videos. Last week, it starts popping up, and people are saying, oh, well, the government stole the money. She's giving it to her friends. This is for the World Economic Forum. No. They did want $2 billion to buy shares of a company that didn't exist. That is true. But the government did say what that company will be. They had no details. It's called the Canada Growth Fund, and it's for the green energy transition, the just transition that is so popular in Alberta these days. They want to put together this fund, $2 billion from the government, up to 15 billion total, with the rest coming from the private sector. Now, as they're about to vote on this, Senator Elizabeth Marshall from Newfoundland, she's the former Auditor General in Newfoundland, former top finance department official in the bureaucracy. She's saying, wait a minute, why are you asking us for this? There's not even a description. How this was first announced in the April budget. Then it was funded in the November fall economic statement. And by December, they still didn't have any structure in place, not even a good description for the senators, the MPs to vote on. Of course, it did pass. The money was allocated, but there's still no corporation. The government hasn't said who will control this Canada Growth Fund, just that it'll be professional investment advisors that will make decisions. But is it going to be in government hands, or is it going to be in the private sector hands? We're handing over $2 billion to fund the green transition, train everyone in Alberta to become janitors and Walmart greeters, and we don't have any details on it. That's not how government should work, and that's the real problem with this.
Yeah, and a lot of those tax dollars also coming from Alberta, so we can transition away from the oil and gas sector. Unbelievable. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.